A stranger can destroy in months what took years of love to build. Be careful who you trust with your home, your children, and your secrets. Not every helper comes to help. Some come to harm. The once joyful home now had a shadow of mistrust creeping silently into its walls. Once upon a time, there lived a man called Mr. Ease. He was tall, gentle, and always smiling. He worked in a bank in the city, but came home every evening to his family. His wife, Mrs. Ease, was a kind woman who loved cooking, cleaning, and making their house beautiful. She also ran a small shop in front of their compound where she sold foodstuff like rice, beans, and gari. Together, they had 2 children, Kayamika, a bright girl of 10 years, and Ibuka, her younger brother who was 7. Life seemed perfect. The children always had neat clothes, their school fees were paid on time, and there was always food on the table. But like every hardworking family, they sometimes felt tired. Mrs. Ease especially found it hard to balance her shop, cooking, washing, and looking after the children. One evening, after she had swept the whole compound and still had to prepare dinner, she sighed deeply and told her husband, "My dear, we need help in this house. I cannot keep doing all these things alone." Mr. Ease looked at her, nodding slowly. "You are right, my wife. Maybe we should get a housemaid. Someone who can help with the chores and take care of the children when we are busy." At first, Mrs. Ease hesitated. She had heard stories of wicked house maids, but she also knew that her strength was failing. Finally, she agreed. That night, after prayers, they both decided to look for a maid. They prayed that God would give them a good girl who would join their happy home and not destroy it. The children were excited when they heard the news. "Mummy, will the maid play with us?" little Ibuka asked with wide eyes. "Yes, my son," his mother smiled. "She will help us, and maybe she will play with you too." The thought of having a maid filled the children's hearts with joy. None of them knew that this one decision would change their lives forever. One Saturday morning, Mr. Ease's cousin, who lived in the village, visited them. She brought along a young girl of about 16 years. Her name was Ngozi. She was slim, dark-skinned, and wore a simple brown gown with old slippers. Her face was calm, and she looked shy. She kept her eyes low as she greeted the family. "This is Ngozi," the cousin explained. "She is from our village. Her parents are poor farmers, and she agreed to work as a maid so that she can also support her family. She is obedient, humble, and hardworking. She will not give you trouble." Mr. and Mrs. Ease looked at Ngozi and felt pity for her. "You are welcome, my daughter," they said kindly. "From today, this is your home." Ngozi bent her head and replied softly, "Thank you, sir." "Thank you, Ma." The children quickly gathered around her. Kayamika held her hand, smiling. "Come, let me show you my toys. I have dolls and skipping ropes," Ibuka shouted, "and I have footballs too." For the first time, Ngozi smiled faintly. The first few weeks were peaceful. Ngozi worked hard. She swept the compound early in the morning, washed the plates after every meal, and even helped in the shop. At night, she would tell the children stories from the village. Her stories about moonlight tales and animals that talked made the children laugh until they fell asleep. Mrs. Ease was happy. She felt free at last. She could now focus on her shop without worrying too much about housework. "God has answered our prayers," she told her husband one night. "Ngozi is truly a blessing." But unknown to them, Ngozi was not as innocent as she appeared. Inside her heart was a shadow that no one could see. She smiled when they were looking, but when no one was around, her eyes turned cold. As weeks turned into months, little things began to change. At first, it was almost unnoticeable. A spoon would go missing, and Ngozi would say, "I don't know where it is." A piece of meat would disappear from the pot, and she would swear she had not touched it. One afternoon, Kayamika told her mother, "Mummy, I saw Ngozi take sweet from the cupboard." But Ngozi quickly defended herself. "No, Ma, she is lying. Maybe she just wants me to get into trouble." Because Ngozi always pretended to be quiet and humble, Mrs. Ease believed her. She scolded her daughter. "Kayamika, stop lying about your sister. She is older than you. Respect her." From that day, Kayamika felt hurt, and she stopped reporting Ngozi's actions. Ngozi became bolder. She started hiding some of the foodstuff from the shop. She would sell it secretly to neighbors and keep the money for herself. Sometimes, She pretended to be sick just to avoid work. But whenever Mr. or Mrs. Ease was around, she acted perfectly. Slowly, the joy in the house began to reduce. The children noticed the changes first. Ibuka whispered to his sister one night, "Kayamaka, I don't like Ngozi anymore. She shouts at me when Mummy is not at home." "I know," Kayamaka replied sadly. "She is not good, but if we tell Mummy, she will not believe us." Ngozi had started planting fear in their hearts. She told them, "If you tell your parents anything about me, I will beat you in the night when everyone is sleeping." The children trembled and kept quiet. From outside, the family still looked happy, but inside, something was breaking slowly. One day, Ngozi began to whisper poison into the ears of Mr. and Mrs. Ease. She would tell the husband, "Sir, your wife is always too busy in the shop. She does not take care of you well. You deserve better." To the wife, she would say, "Madam, your husband is always coming home late. Maybe he is seeing another woman. Be careful." At first, they ignored her words, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. Soon, they started to argue over little things. The children sat in corners, afraid of the rising tension. Ngozi smiled secretly each time they quarreled. Her plan was working. She wanted to be the center of the house, the one everyone trusted, while they all mistrusted one another. One evening, when Mrs. Ease counted her shop money, she noticed that 5,000 naira was missing. She searched everywhere but could not find it. When she asked Ngozi, the maid acted shocked. "Me? Steal money? God forbid. Maybe Madam counted it wrongly." Mr. Ease also believed Ngozi. He told his wife, "Stop accusing her. Ngozi is a good girl." Mrs. Ease felt pain in her heart. For the first time, she wondered if getting a maid was truly a blessing. One Saturday morning, Mrs. Ease prepared a beautiful necklace for her daughter, Kayamaka, to wear for a birthday party. She placed it carefully on the table in their bedroom. But when it was time to dress the child, the necklace was gone. They searched everywhere, under the bed, in the wardrobe, even in the drawers, but it had vanished. Mrs. Ease asked, "Ngozi, did you see the necklace?" The girl shook her head innocently. "No, madam, I did not." Kayamaka looked at her with angry eyes. She wanted to shout, "I saw you take it," but fear tied her lips. The house grew quiet. A heavy air hung over them. For the first time, Mr. and Mrs. Ease stared at each other with suspicion. Who could have taken it? Was it the maid? Was it someone else? Or could it be the children? And that was only the beginning. After the necklace went missing, the house was never the same again. Though no one spoke about it openly, a cloud of doubt floated in the air. Kayamaka avoided looking at Ngozi, and Ibuka stayed quiet most of the time. Mrs. Ease began to hide her belongings carefully, but still, she was not at peace. Ngozi noticed this tension, and instead of being afraid, she smiled secretly. This was the life she wanted: confusion, suspicion, and quiet fights. She pretended to be innocent, but in the dark corners of the house, her eyes carried a secret fire. One evening, Mr. Ease returned from work looking tired. Ngozi quickly brought him a glass of cold water and set his slippers neatly beside the chair. "Welcome, sir," she said softly. "Your wife has not returned from the shop yet. You must be hungry." Her words sounded caring, but they carried a hidden knife. Mr. Ease sighed. She works too much. Maybe she loves money more than you," Ngozi whispered with fake pity. Her voice entered his heart like a sharp blade. He shook his head, trying to ignore it, but later that night, when his wife came home late and too tired to cook, her words returned to his mind. For the first time, he raised his voice at her. "Why are you always at the shop? Do you even care about your family anymore?" Mrs. Ease was shocked. Tears filled her eyes. "I work for this family, not for myself. How can you say this to me?" Ngozi, listening secretly behind the door, pressed her lips together to hide her laughter. The seed she planted was growing. As days passed, little quarrels turned into big arguments. If food was too salty, Mr. Ease would complain bitterly. If money went missing, Mrs. Ease would shout and cry. The children sat in silence, watching their once loving parents grow apart. Ngozi was now bold. She no longer spoke kindly to the children. She ordered them around like a queen. "Kayamaka, wash those plates before I beat you. Ibuka, Fetch water before I slap your head. The children wanted to tell their mother, but fear covered their mouths. Ngozi had warned them, if you say one word against me, I will hurt you when you are asleep. I will even pour hot water on your dolls and footballs. One afternoon, when Mrs. Ease tried to correct Ngozi for forgetting to wash clothes, the girl raised her voice. Why are you shouting at me? Am I your slave? The words shocked Mrs. Ease. She wanted to slap her but held herself back. Ngozi, respect yourself. If not for our kindness, you would still be suffering in the village. Ngozi hissed quietly and walked away. That night, she entered the children's room and whispered, See how I talk to your mother? Soon, she will not be able to control me. You better respect me too. The children trembled. One evening, Kayamika could not sleep. She tiptoed to the window and looked outside. There, in the corner of the compound, she saw Ngozi crouching with something shiny in her hand. It was the missing necklace. Ngozi held it close to her chest and laughed softly to herself. Kayamika's heart raced. She wanted to scream, but fear held her tongue. She crawled back into bed, covering herself with her blanket. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The next morning, Ngozi acted normal. She swept the compound and even cooked breakfast. No one knew her secret, but Kayamika knew. She carried the heavy burden alone because she was too afraid to speak. Ngozi's wickedness did not stop there. She started sneaking out of the compound at night. She met with some bad friends at the back of the street. They drank palm wine, laughed loudly, and mocked the Ease family. They think she is humble, one of them said, but she is eating their food, stealing their money, and breaking their peace. Ngozi laughed with them. Very soon, they will fight so much that they will not even notice me. Suspicion grew stronger in the house. Mr. Ease thought his wife was careless. Mrs. Ease thought her husband was no longer loving. The children stayed silent. Only Ngozi was at peace, enjoying the chaos she created. One Sunday morning, when they returned from church, they discovered that some of the shop goods had gone missing. Bags of rice, tins of milk, and bottles of oil. Mrs. Ease was alarmed. Thieves must have entered the shop. But strangely, the lock was still in place. It looked like someone with a key had opened it. She felt a chill in her bones but said nothing. She did not want to accuse anyone without proof. At night, she told her husband, I think someone inside is stealing from us. Her husband frowned. You are just being paranoid. Stop suspecting Ngozi. That girl is the only one who truly respects me in this house. The words stabbed her heart. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Slowly, she began to lose trust even in her own husband. Ngozi had achieved her goal. The family was trapped in her web of lies and tricks. One fateful Friday night, something happened that shocked everyone. Mr. Ease came home early, and while walking past the kitchen, he heard whispers. He stopped and listened. It was Ngozi's voice. She was speaking to someone on the phone. Yes, I have the money. I will bring it tomorrow. These foolish people don't even know what I am doing. By the time I am done, their house will scatter. Mr. Ease's heart jumped. He pushed the door open, but Ngozi quickly hid the phone in her pocket. She turned with innocent eyes. Welcome, sir. Do you want food? He stared at her, his mouth dry. Had he really heard what he thought he heard? Or was his mind playing tricks on him? Before he could speak, Mrs. Ease entered. What is happening here? She asked. Ngozi smiled sweetly. Nothing, madam. I was just asking sir what he would like for dinner. The moment passed, but the doubt in Mr. Ease's heart grew. For the first time, he looked at Ngozi with suspicion. That same night, as the family slept, a scream pierced the darkness. It came from the children's room. When the parents rushed in, they found Kayamika crying, pointing at Ngozi, who stood by the window holding a candle. She was trying to burn my school bag, the girl shouted. Everyone froze. The room went silent except for Kayamika's sobs and the crackling flame of the candle in Ngozi's hand. The candle in her hand told a truth words could not hide. But still, when she cried and said, I was only looking for matches, I did not mean to burn anything, Mr. and Mrs. Ease forced themselves to believe her. Fear covered their hearts like dust. They were too ashamed to admit they might have brought danger into their own home. But the children knew the truth. Kayamika avoided Ngozi completely, and Ibuka clung to his mother like a shadow. At night, they whispered under their blankets. Mummy and Daddy don't see what we see. Ngozi is not good. The wicked maid, knowing they were too afraid to expose her, became even bolder. She started locking the shop and keeping the keys with her. When Mr. Ease asked, "Why do you always hold the keys?" she replied sweetly, "So that Madam can rest. I don't want her to suffer." Behind the sweetness was a thief's hand. More food disappeared, more money vanished. And one day, the worst betrayal happened. Mrs. Ease woke up to find her husband's wallet empty. 5 months of savings were gone. He shouted in anger, accusing his wife. She cried and swore she had not touched it. From the corner, Ngozi watched with a smile hidden behind her palm. Arguments turned into wars. The once happy house became a battlefield. Mr. Ease shouted every night. Mrs. Ease wept every morning. The children walked around like strangers, afraid of their own home. The neighbors began to whisper, "What is happening to the Ease family? They used to be so united. Now they fight like cats and dogs." But no one knew the real reason. Ngozi's poison had spread into every corner. She began telling neighbors lies too. "Madam beats me. Sir refuses to give me food. They treat me like a slave." People pitied her. Some even gave her gifts and money. Inside the family, trust was dead. Even when small things got missing, husband suspected wife, wife suspected husband, and the children suspected each other. Only Ngozi was free. One evening, Kayamika finally gathered courage. She told her mother, "Mummy, it was Ngozi who took your necklace. I saw her with it outside." But instead of believing her, Mrs. Ease slapped her. "Stop lying. Why do you hate her so much?" The pain of the slap hurt more than fire. Kayamika cried into her pillow that night, her heart breaking into pieces. She wished she could run away. She wished her parents could see the truth. Everything came crashing down one stormy night. Rain poured heavily. Thunder shook the windows. The children huddled close to their mother. Mr. Ease had not yet returned from work. Ngozi, thinking no one was watching, sneaked into the bedroom. She opened the wooden box where Mrs. Ease kept her last gold earrings, gifts from her late mother. She slipped them into her pocket. But Kayamika, awake with fear of the thunder, saw everything. She ran to her mother. Mummy, it's Ngozi. She stole Grandma's earrings." This time, Mrs. Ease ran quickly to the room and caught Ngozi red-handed. The earrings were still in her palm. For a moment, the whole house froze. The thunder outside roared like the voice of God. Ngozi's face hardened. She dropped her fake tears and shouted, "Yes, I took it. And what will you do? You all are blind. You trusted me more than your own blood. You gave me the keys, the money, the food. You let me rule this house like a queen. Now see what is left of you? Empty, broken, and full of mistrust." Her words pierced their hearts like daggers. Mr. Ease returned that moment, drenched in rain, only to meet his wife crying on the floor, the children wailing, and Ngozi standing boldly with fire in her eyes. Neighbors rushed in after hearing the commotion. They saw Ngozi holding the earrings, and her wickedness was finally exposed. Mr. Ease shouted in anger, "Get out of my house this night." Ngozi laughed. "Throw me out if you want, but your family will never be the same again. I have done my work. You no longer trust each other. You no longer sleep in peace. Even when I leave, the shadow of my wickedness will remain." And with that, she stormed out into the rain, never to return. But her words were true. The damage was done. Even after she was gone, the family could not return to their old joy. Mr. and Mrs. Ease found it hard to trust each other again. The children became quiet and withdrawn. The sound of laughter that once filled the compound was gone forever. The wicked maid had left scars deeper than wounds. This story of the wicked maid is not just about one family. It is a lesson for everyone. Be careful who you welcome into your home. Not every smiling face is a good heart. Some people hide evil behind soft voices. Listen to children. Sometimes, the truth comes from their small lips, but adults ignore them. If the Eases had listened to Kayamika and Ibuka earlier, their home would not have broken. Greed and laziness invite trouble. If Mrs. Ease had not depended fully on the maid, maybe she would have seen the warning signs. Trust is fragile. Once it is broken, it is hard to repair. The Ease family lost more than money and jewelry. They lost their peace. Be prayerful and watchful. The devil often enters through the door of carelessness.